Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you're here. I am so excited for today's video. Today is my first ever book recommendation video. I also hope the lighting is okay because it's my first time filming in this spot. And it took me a while to figure out where to position myself. So hopefully the video looks okay. Today, even though it is 89 degrees outside, we are going to be doing fall book recommendations and my fall TBR. I am so excited to chat with you guys and just talk about all these books that I have right here in front of me. So let's just go ahead and get right on into it. Okay, we're gonna start out with some fantasy book recs, and honestly, I haven't read that much fantasy, but the fantasy I have read have all been like incredible and amazing. And when I think of fall, I think of fantasy. So right here, right now, I'm just gonna be telling you books that, like, if you haven't read them, what are you doing? The first one being the infamous, tried and true Harry Potter series. This is one of the most famous book series, like, ever, so I'm not really gonna do a synopsis of this or anything like that. I just have to say that if you haven't read this yet, this is definitely something that you should go into. These books just get better and better as you read them, and the first few are actually pretty short, so even if you don't want to read the last few, I definitely recommend just reading the first three. They're just super cute and fun, and they are like young adult. I have a feeling though whenever you read these three, you're going to want to read the rest. Before I go crazy and talk about this way too much, I'm gonna go ahead and slide it back on over here. Now we're gonna be getting into probably one of my favorite book series of all time. I feel like a lot of people talk about this, but I feel like it is not as hyped as it honestly should be, even though a lot of people talk about it. It is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. It's about to become a trilogy. So we have Once Upon a Broken Heart, and then we have The Ballad of Never After. These books, there is nothing quite like them. These books are more of like a fantasy fairy tale, so if you're looking into getting into fantasy and you haven't really read anything yet, I would definitely recommend these as a good gateway into fantasy. It's not too confusing, there's not a lot of world building, you just kind of get right on into it. These books are about a girl named Evangeline Fox, and basically her true love just all of a sudden like stopped talking to her, and she's like, okay, like, why are we doing that? And now he's just getting married to another girl. So she goes and she prays to the Prince of Hearts named Jax, and her and Jax end up going on this journey together, and honestly it ends up turning into something that you definitely do not expect, which I love about these books. I never know what is going to happen next. I actually read this one this past month, and it was just everything. This book wrecked me in all the best ways. It's so beautifully tragic, and it's just so beautiful and fun and everything that a good fantasy book should be. So if you haven't read these, do it, okay? I'm just trying to help you out. My next fantasy book rec, like, honestly, like, do I even need to? The cliffhanger that I was left on. Also with this one, too, let me just say, the cliffhangers these two books leave you on, if you haven't read these yet, you need to wait until the next book comes out, because I've been going a little crazy, okay? I cannot stop thinking about these. Fourth Wing is about a girl named Violet Sorrengail, and whenever you come of age, you have to go to Basquiat, which is like a war college, and join one of the quadrants. So you have healers, scribes, and writers. And Violet was always supposed to be a scribe who are like super smart, but her mom is like a general, and she kind of like sucks. So she ends up forcing Violet to become a writer with no training, and it's like super dangerous, and a writer of none other than dragons. If that doesn't intrigue you enough, like I don't know what will. This was all over Book Talk, so I'm sure you've heard people talking about it, but again, I'm just reiterating what I need you to do, and that is read this book. The next fantasy series I will not go super in-depth in either. Same thing with Harry Potter. I am currently on the third book, about to finish it today actually. I have a reading vlog of me reading the first one, and I'm doing a reading vlog of me reading the second and third one together right now. So definitely go check those out. The Enemies to Lovers is so good, and The Found Family is just everything. There's so many characters in these books, but you just know, well, it starts off so slow and it gradually moves you into the world. So I never really get like super confused. There are a few times where I'm like, wait, who is that? Like, we've met you like one time. I don't know, we were on a first name basis, baby. Again, about to finish the third one, and literally after this video, that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to sit and read the rest. I am so excited to finish this series this fall. Okay, the first romance book that I'm gonna recommend to you guys, I don't have with me, but it's When in Rome by Sarah Adams. This book is about a pop star who goes to a small town to just kind of like get away from the world, and she ends up meeting this guy named Noah, and they kind of hit it off, and it's kind of like a will they, won't they type of thing. And it's just super cute and super wholesome how how he takes her in and just treats her like a normal person. And it's just very like cutesy and kind of just wholesome. Like that's the perfect word for it, honestly. And we also love a good small town romance. I feel like that is the perfect fit for fall. Just a small town cozy vibe. And I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was very cute. Okay, sorry if anything looks a little bit different. I had to change my camera battery. Let's get back on another Rex. The next series that I'm going to be talking about is the Knock 'Em Out series by Lucy Score. The first book is Things We Never Got Over, and the second book is Things We Hide from the Light. I have read the first one. I have not read the second one yet, but I think this is going to be one of my next reads. These books are about the small town of Knock 'Em Out. This one is about Knox and Naomi, and this one is about Knox's brother Nash, and I think her name is Lena. These are definitely a little spicy, I will say, and they definitely are like a little bit longer for romance books. But if you want to get immersed in like a cute little small town world, I would definitely recommend these two. These are super popular too, so if you haven't heard of these, I would be surprised.
What are you doing?
Filming.
Want one?
Yeah. Okay, two things. You might notice I'm wearing a different outfit, and that is because I decided to take a little break from filming this video and eat some lunch because my dad brought me pizza, as you saw, and I might have spilt it down my entire front and had to use Clorox wipes to clean myself up. The other romances that I have aren't fall themed like the other ones that I've mentioned, and they're not small town, but they do just give like comfort and kind of cozy vibes, which I feel like again is perfect for the fall. This first book is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. Everybody talks about this book. I feel like this book is a second chance romance and then also a friends to lovers. This book follows Macy and Elliot, and basically they were best friends whenever they were younger. They were next door neighbors and they would always read together, and Elliot was like the only person that Macy felt comfortable confiding in and being vulnerable with. And it goes from past to present, so now we go to them in the present and they're not talking, they're not speaking at all, haven't been in each other's lives in like 10 years. And so the whole book you're trying to figure out what happened to make these two kids who seem totally like the perfect match for each other stop talking. I think the biggest reason why this is cozy to me is because they talk a lot about reading, and it's just very comforting having a male main character be so understanding and vulnerable. And Elliot is just honestly like one of the most perfect book boyfriends. I highly recommend this if you haven't read it. The next book I have is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I absolutely love this book. This book is about Nathan, who is the captain of the hockey team, and Stassi, who is a figure skater. They both go to the same college, and something happens with the hockey team's ice rink, and they go to a college with 2 ice rinks. When I read about that, I was like, they must be like rich. But they end up having to share the figure skating ice rink, and that's kind of how they get acquainted with each other. And this book just starts off as one thing and then goes into something completely different. It just talks about very real things, and the found family in this book is very good too. I fell in love with all of the characters, not just Nathan and Stassi, which I really like. I like it whenever books have like that community feeling, and that's what kind of made it feel like cozy to me. So that's why I feel like it is a perfect like fall romance read. I just don't really feel like I can do a book recommendations video without mentioning this book. This is Better Than the Movies by Len Painter. I know so many people talk about this, so many people have talked about this for so long, but I feel like the fall is just a really nice time to read it. It's the perfect YA just comfort book. This book is about a girl named Liz, and she's been obsessed with rom-coms since she can remember, and she really wants a chance with this guy. So her other guy friend, they make a deal for him to help her to get this guy to ask her to the prom, and that's kind of the whole book. They end up fake dating and stuff like that, and the guy's name is Wes, and he, again, just like Elliot, is just he's just so perfect, especially for like a high school boy. This is actually the only YA romance that I have in here, and this is probably one of my favorite romance books that I've ever read, just because it gives me that like giddy feeling. Just makes me so happy reading it. Like I was like kicking my feet, laughing, giggling, just enjoying every minute of it, and I kind of want to reread it. And obviously they're in high school, so I feel like fall is the perfect time to read like that kind of romance for some reason, just because it's comforting and brings you back to those beloved high school days. The last romance that I'm going to talk about is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. This book is set in New York City, which honestly, I don't know why, but New York City instantly gives me like fall vibes. It's about a girl named Danny who has everything planned out to a T for her life, and then tragedy strikes and she has to reevaluate everything. This book was a little sad. I cried a lot, but it's also very short, so it's just a very good, I don't want to say palette cleanser in between some of the fantasies that you're going to be reading probably this fall, but I'm sharing it because it gave me the fall vibes and because I want to know what you guys thought of the ending, because a lot of people have different thoughts on this book, so I'm curious to see what your guys' thoughts are. Okay, this next book is the only book that I have in this category. It's kind of like a literary fiction, historical fiction, and it's none other than Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I feel like everybody has kind of heard about this book by now because it got made into a series earlier this year, so it became pretty popular. But this is like, there is nothing quite like this book. It is so uniquely written. It's basically about a band and how they got their start, and you literally get every point of view of the band because it's kind of almost written like a play. So there's like a name, and then they have their own little blurb, kind of like they were like talking to a documentary. And the main characters, they just, I don't know, like you almost hate that you love them. And it's so interesting to see all the behind the scenes of how they got started. And it's kind of loosely based on Fleetwood Mac, and I love Fleetwood Mac personally. And it's also in the 70s, which love that, love the 70s. And I don't know why this gives me fall. Like, I don't know why it screams fall to me, but it just does. So like, if you haven't read this yet, you should definitely just read it in the fall. I feel like it's the perfect time. Okay, now we're gonna be getting into my fall TBR, which I'm very excited for, but I'm also a little nervous. You will have noticed that I didn't really talk about any thrillers because I really haven't read any because I am a big ol' scaredy cat. So I do have a few thrillers that I want to read and want to get to, and honestly, like, the list goes on. We will see if I actually end up reading them because it does make me very scared and nervous. So the first thriller mystery is the Natural series, which you guys have probably heard a lot about this recently. It's by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, the same author that wrote the Inheritance Games. A lot of people describe this as like a YA Criminal Minds. I'm pretty sure just about a bunch of teenagers who come together and they have these like special gifts that help them figure out cases, maybe like serial killer stuff. I don't really know. I feel like this one is probably the one that I am least scared of. So maybe I'll read this, we'll see. The next book we have is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This book is literally one of the most hyped books ever. I just haven't read it, and so many people talk about it, and I want to know what happens, point blank period. I'm actually terrified to read this though, so will I read it? Will it probably just sit on my shelf? Yeah, probably. Next we have She's Gone by David Bell. My friend Brooke actually read this and gave me this book. This was one of the first books that she read that kind of got her back into reading, and she really enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure this is also a YA kind of mystery thriller. Basically this guy Hunter like wakes up and he's in the hospital with his girlfriend, and he's like, okay, like what happened? So the whole book he's trying to figure out what happened, and he doesn't really know what's going on, and neither do I, because that's kind of all I've gotten from the back of the book. But my friend Brooke liked it, so I definitely, if I get to any of these, I want to get to the Naturals and this one. Lastly, for like thrillers and mysteries, we have Little Fires Everywhere, which honestly I don't know a lot about this book. All I know is that it's a show and it's a part of Reese's book club, and I trust Reese Witherspoon. I'm pretty sure my friend Olivia read this though and didn't really like it. I'm pretty sure all the people that I know have read this didn't really like it, so I am a little bit nervous. Did I buy this at Barnes & Noble because it just looked small and short? Maybe. Okay, now getting on into the fantasy that is on my TBR. I have a lot of these for the fall. Starting out with some new releases, we have A Curse for True Love, which is a part of the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and it's the last book, which I am so sad about. I already talked to you guys about these though, but I am just so excited about that book, especially because this ended off on a cliffhanger. Going along with that, the author Stephanie Garber also has another trilogy that is in like the same world that technically you're supposed to read first, but I didn't, and it's the Caraval trilogy. I also really want to get into those ones. I heard those are more about like building the world and stuff like that, and these just kind of jump into the world. And I've heard that people like the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy more than the Caraval trilogy, but I still want to read them because I just absolutely love Stephanie Garber's writing. Our next new release is Iron Flame, which is the second book in like the Fourth Wing series. I think it's called The Empyrean. I'm not entirely sure. Again, the cliffhanger. Like, why would they do that to me? Now I have to wait till November. Already pre-ordered though, so don't you guys worry. The next book we have is Divine Rivals. This went kind of crazy viral on TikTok recently, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it. Everybody that's read it that I know personally too said that they really enjoyed it. This is a romantasy that's kind of set during a war, and I think they have like magic typewriters. Me describing books that I don't know anything about, but I've heard this is just very romantic and just a beautiful story, and I've heard the writing in this is very good too. Next we have The Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. I only have the first one as of right now. This book is basically about like a group of people who have special gifts, kind of like the Naturals, but just completely different because this is in a fantasy world, and I love a book with multiple point of views, so I don't know, I've been excited for this one for a while, but I've just been waiting till the fall to read it, so it's finally the time. Next we have the Dance of Thieves duology. This one has been talked about for a while too, Again, just haven't gotten around to it. And I'll be honest, I know nothing about this one, but that is like my favorite part of going into a book, especially a fantasy world, because I just don't want anything to be given away. And I feel like if you don't know a lot about it, you're just totally immersed in the world, and it becomes easier to be excited about it because you don't know where it's going. Like even parts of ACOTAR were like kind of ruined for me just because everybody was talking about Reese, and I was on book 1 and I was like I know she ends up with him, you know? This one has been hyped about, but it hasn't been like that talked about, if that makes sense. So nothing's been ruined, and I'm excited because Stephanie Garber has like a little blurb on this talking about how this book is really good, and then the girls on the podcast all read what she's reading talk about this book a lot too. So I feel like I'm gonna enjoy it. It's just another good fantasy read. Okay, the next book that I'm very excited about is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is a part of a trilogy, I'm pretty sure. I don't think there's any more books coming out. This will be my first book about superheroes, and if you know anything about me, I love Marvel. I love all things superheroes. So I feel like this book is perfect for me. Basically, the Renegades are a group of people who have superpowers, and they're kind of like, I think, don't quote me, but I think they're like the government of their society. But then there's also renegades who have powers that don't want to be a part of the Renegades group, and they kind of want to end the Renegades and like change things. So a classic fantasy, like having a rebellion. But I'm very excited for this because again, I love superheroes, so I feel like this would be perfect for me. Okay, and then we have a few more that I don't have with me. I really want to get into the Throne of Glass series. I'm definitely finishing ACOTAR this fall, so I'm probably going to be reading Throne of Glass maybe like end of October, early November, but I just really want to get into it. I do want to read Crescent City too, but I don't think that I'm going to be able to get to that this fall. I definitely don't think I'm going to be able to finish the Sarah J Maas verse whenever Crescent City 3 comes out, but I eventually want to read all of her books, and I definitely want to at least start the Throne of Glass series this fall. I also have a book coming in the mail that I kind of forgot about, but it's Powerless. Basically, this girl who has been on Book Talk for a while, she wrote this fantasy book, and apparently it is like amazing. I just have heard so much about it, and I think it's an enemies to lovers too, and it's going to be a series. So I'm very excited to get into another series, and also the cover is just so like beautiful. I probably would have picked this up if I saw it in a bookstore. And I have two kind of like witchy-esque books. One of them is on Kindle Unlimited, and it's The Modern Girl's Guide to Magic, and then the other one is A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Now, do I know what these are about? No. But have I seen people that I trust talking about them and saying that they're good? Yes. And honestly, I've never really read a lot about witches, and I'm kind of into that. So I think that they would be perfect for this fall. Okay, now finally we're gonna go ahead and get into the romances that I'm excited to read this fall. We have two new releases, one being Things We Left Behind, which is a part of the Knock 'Em Out series, and the second one being Wildfire by Hannah Grace, which is a part of the Icebreaker series. I'm probably most excited for Wildfire just because I absolutely loved Icebreaker, but I'm still incredibly excited for Things We Left Behind because this is about my favorite couple in the book. I've been waiting for this book since I read the first one. Still have to read the second one, so it might be a second, but it is pre-ordered, and I think it's actually supposed to come in today because today's the release day. But I'm just so excited to continue both of these interconnected standalone series. Next book is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham. I literally can't speak. By Hannah Bonham Young. I've heard a lot about this on Book Talk recently, and it's literally rated a 4.46 on Goodreads, which is such a good sign. It's about this girl who's like fiercely independent, and she doesn't really feel like she needs a guy in her life like that. And I know there's like surprise or accidental pregnancy trope in this one, so if that's not your thing, maybe you won't like this, but I'm very excited to read this just because of the rating, and everybody who likes it likes the same things as me, so I have high hopes. I also really want to read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I think that's how you say her last name, I don't really know. And The 7-Year Slip by her that just recently came out. This one came out last year, but I've just heard both of these give like the perfect fall atmosphere for a romance, and I just that's kind of like what I'm looking for. So I'm just very excited to get all the fall vibes from this and The 7-Year Slip. Those are going to be all of my fall book recommendations and all the books on my fall TBR this year. If you guys enjoyed this video, have any thoughts on any of these books or any other books that I should read, please let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to see more videos like this from me. And yeah, I think that's it. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys. Ow. But like, who are we barking at? Real talk. Hey, there's nobody there though.